The click of the lock echoed in the otherwise silent apartment. My stomach, already a tight knot, twisted further. "Honey, I'm home." Her voice, usually bright and melodic, sounded strained. I stood in the kitchen, back to the door, a glass of water trembling slightly in my hand. I hadn't slept properly in weeks, the suspicion gnawing at me like a persistent rodent. Late nights at work, hushed phone calls, the faint, unfamiliar cologne clinging to her clothes. I hated myself for even considering it, for letting the seed of doubt grow into this monstrous, suffocating thing. "Why are you standing there in the dark?" she asked, flicking on the kitchen light. Her eyes widened slightly, but not with surprise. With guilt. "You look strange." "Do I?" I asked, my voice low and even. I turned, revealing the man standing behind me. Tall, well-built, with a smug smile plastered across his face that vanished the moment he saw Amelia's expression. It was like watching a deer caught in headlights. She staggered back, hand flying to her mouth. "Kai," she whispered, the word choked with disbelief. It wasn't a question, it was a plea for this not to be real. "Amelia," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. "You remember Kai, don't you? From the marketing conference in Miami last month. The one I couldn't attend because Mom was sick." The color drained from her face, leaving her looking ghostly pale. Kai shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between Amelia and me. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "You know, Kai," I said, stepping closer to him, forcing him to back up against the counter. "I've been picturing this moment for weeks. Imagining what I would say, what I would do." I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper, "And you know what I've realized? Words are pointless." I didn't hit him. Not yet. I simply looked him dead in the eyes, letting the weight of my betrayal crush him. He flinched, avoiding my gaze. He knew what was coming. He knew what he deserved. "John, please," Amelia pleaded, her voice cracking. "Let's just talk about this." "Talk?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "We've been married for 10 years, Amelia. 10 years. And you think we can just talk about this?" I turned back to Kai, the simmering rage finally boiling over. I grabbed him by the collar of his expensive suit, my knuckles white. "You," I growled, shoving him hard against the refrigerator. The impact rattled the dishes inside. "You knew she was married. You knew what you were doing." He stammered, trying to form a coherent sentence, but all that came out was a pathetic whimper. I released him with a disgusted shove, stepping back as he stumbled, regaining his balance. "Get out," I said, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. "Both of you, get out of my house." Amelia started to protest, but one look at my face silenced her. She gathered her purse, her movements jerky and uncertain. Kai, looking thoroughly shaken, followed her out the door, not even bothering to retrieve his jacket. The click of the lock a second time was the final punctuation mark on a chapter of my life I desperately wanted to erase. I stood there, alone in the silence, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away, leaving behind a hollow ache. I felt numb, adrift in a sea of betrayal and pain. But I knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't let them win. Over the next few days, I moved with a strange sense of purpose. I contacted a lawyer, initiated divorce proceedings, and began packing Amelia's belongings. I found a small, furnished apartment across town and moved in, leaving the ghosts of our past life behind. The pain was still there, a dull throb in my chest, but I refused to let it consume me. Then came the real revenge. Not the physical kind, not the screaming matches or the public humiliation. My revenge was quiet, calculated, and ultimately, far more devastating. Amelia worked for a small, prestigious advertising agency. Kai was a client, the CEO of a prominent tech company. I knew their affair had been conducted under the guise of business trips and late-night meetings. I also knew that Kai, despite his married status, had a reputation for being a ruthless businessman, a man who valued his public image above all else. Using an anonymous email address, I sent a detailed account of their affair, along with supporting evidence, hotel receipts, flight itineraries, even a few grainy photos I'd managed to acquire, to Kai's wife, his board of directors, and several key media outlets. The fallout was spectacular. Kai's wife filed for divorce, taking him for everything he was worth. His company's stock plummeted. His reputation was tarnished beyond repair. He became a pariah in the business world, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. Amelia, too, suffered the consequences. She was fired from her job, her career prospects in the advertising industry effectively destroyed. She tried to contact me, to apologize, to explain, but I never responded. I had nothing left to say to her. My revenge wasn't about causing pain for the sake of it. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. It was about ensuring that they both understood the consequences of their actions. It was about closing that chapter of my life and starting anew. It wasn't easy, the scars remained, but in the quiet solitude of my new apartment, I began to rebuild, piece by painful piece. I focused on my work, reconnected with old friends, and slowly, tentatively, started to look towards the future. The future that Amelia and Kai had tried to steal from me. A future that was now, finally, my own.